The year was 2087, and Captain David Rodriguez never imagined his name would go down in history for all the wrong reasons. He stood on the bridge of the Starship Explorer, watching the beautiful blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. After traveling for 3 years through space, they had finally reached Kepler 442b, a world that might hold the first alien life humanity had ever encountered. "Sir, we're picking up some unusual readings," said Lieutenant Kim Park, the ship's communication officer. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and nervousness that everyone on the bridge could feel. David nodded and walked closer to her station. The entire crew of 200 had trained for this moment for years. They carried messages of peace from Earth, along with gifts and cultural items meant to show their friendly intentions. The plan was simple: make contact, learn about each other, and hopefully start a friendship between two different worlds. But plans don't always work out the way people hope. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the team's language expert, was busy trying to decode the strange signals coming from the planet's surface. She had spent months preparing translation programs, but nothing could have prepared her for what they were about to encounter. "The signals are definitely coming from intelligent life," she announced to the bridge crew. "The patterns are too complex to be natural. Someone down there is trying to talk to us." As their ship entered the planet's atmosphere, they could see cities below. Not like human cities, but organized structures that clearly showed intelligence and planning. The buildings seemed to flow, like water, with smooth curves and spiral shapes that caught the sunlight in amazing ways. "It's beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Jake Thompson, the ship's security chief. Even though his job was to keep everyone safe, he couldn't help but be amazed by what he was seeing. The landing area they had chosen was near what looked like the main city. As they descended, they could see figures gathering in the distance. The aliens appeared tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer in different colors as they moved. When the ship finally touched down, David felt his heart racing. This was it, the moment that would change everything for humanity. The alien delegation approached slowly. Their leader was a female figure who moved with dignity and purpose. Her name, they would later learn, was Lyra Veltar. She was a mother of 2 children and served as a cultural ambassador for her people, the Zephyrians. Lyra had spent weeks preparing for this meeting. Her people had been watching the human ship approach their world, and they were just as curious and nervous as the humans were. She carried with her the traditional greeting ceremony items, crystals, that represented peace and understanding in Zephyrian culture. As the two groups met in the open area between the ship and the city, Dr. Walsh activated her translation device. The machine had been programmed with thousands of possible language patterns, but it had never been tested with truly alien speech. Lyra stepped forward and began the traditional Zephyrian greeting. She raised the crystals above her head and spoke words that meant, "We offer our hearts and minds in friendship." But the translation device, struggling with concepts that didn't exist in human language, produced a completely different message. "We demand submission and surrender," appeared on Dr. Walsh's screen. The humans froze. This wasn't what they had expected at all. Lieutenant Thompson's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. Captain Rodriguez held up his hand to stop him, but the damage was already done. The Zephyrians, who could sense emotional changes through their advanced empathic abilities, immediately felt the shift in the humans' mood from curiosity to fear and suspicion. "Sir, are they threatening us?" asked Lieutenant Park, her voice tight with worry. "I don't know," David replied, trying to stay calm. "Dr. Walsh, are you sure about that translation?" Jennifer stared at her device, confused. "The machine is giving me this reading, but something feels wrong about it. Let me try again." But it was too late. The misunderstanding had already begun to spiral out of control. When Lyra saw the humans backing away and reaching for their weapons, she thought they were rejecting the peace offering. In Zephyrian culture, refusing a greeting ceremony was considered a serious insult. She tried to explain, speaking more urgently, but this only made the translation device produce even more confusing and seemingly threatening messages. "They're saying something about taking over our ship," Lieutenant Thompson reported, his voice getting louder. "That can't be right," Dr. Walsh said, frantically adjusting her equipment. "The language patterns don't match aggressive behavior, but the translations keep coming out wrong." More Zephyrians began gathering in the distance, drawn by the commotion. To the humans, it looked like they were being surrounded. To the Zephyrians, they were simply curious citizens coming to witness this historic meeting. Captain Rodriguez found himself in an impossible situation. His orders from Earth were clear. Make peaceful contact if possible, but protect the crew at all costs. The situation was quickly becoming dangerous, and he had to make a decision. "All units, prepare for defensive positions," he ordered reluctantly. The sound of weapons being activated sent a wave of panic through both groups. Lyra's people had never seen such devices before, but they could sense the hostile intent behind them. Some of the younger Zephyrians began to run back toward the city, which only made the humans more nervous. In the chaos that followed, shots were fired. Not with the intent to hurt anyone, but as warning shots meant to keep the aliens back. But the Zephyrians had never experienced anything like the sound and flash of human weapons. They had no context for understanding that these were meant as warnings rather than attacks. Lyra watched in horror as her peaceful greeting ceremony turned into a nightmare. Her people scattered in all directions, and she could hear the cries of fear and confusion echoing across the landing area. "Wait, please!" she called out in her own language, trying to stop the panic. But her words only came through the broken translation system as more apparent threats. Lieutenant Thompson made the decision that would haunt him for years to come. Seeing what he believed were hostile aliens advancing on their position, he ordered the capture of several Zephyrians, including Lyra herself. As the containment fields activated around her, Lyra felt a despair deeper than anything she had ever experienced. She thought of her 2 children back in the city, probably watching this disaster unfold. She thought of her mate, who would be wondering why she hadn't returned home. Most of all, she thought about how this moment was supposed to have been the beginning of something beautiful between their 2 species. Instead, it had become the start of a tragedy built on misunderstanding and fear. The human crew quickly retreated to their ship with their prisoners, leaving behind a scene of confusion and heartbreak. Neither side understood what had really happened, but both sides now saw the other as a threat. As the explorer lifted off from the planet's surface, Lyra pressed her face against the small window of her containment cell. Below, she could see her city growing smaller, and with it, any hope she had of seeing her family again. She had no way of knowing that this moment of despair would eventually become the foundation for something neither species had expected, a chance for true understanding between 2 very different forms of life. 3 weeks had passed since the disaster on Kepler 442b, and the research vessel Explorer was now traveling through deep space, heading back toward Earth. Captain David Rodriguez hadn't slept properly since they left the alien planet. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see the confusion and fear in those alien faces during what was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. The ship's containment bay had been converted into a temporary holding area for the 5 Zephyrian prisoners they had taken. The largest cell held Lyra, the alien woman who seemed to be some kind of leader among her people. Dr. Jennifer Walsh spent most of her time there, trying to fix the translation problems that had caused so much trouble. "Good morning, Lyra," Jennifer said softly as she entered the containment area. She had been visiting every day, slowly teaching the alien woman basic human words while learning Zephyrian phrases in return. Lyra looked up from where she sat on the floor. Her shimmering skin had grown duller over the past weeks, and Jennifer could see the sadness in her large, expressive eyes. Despite everything that had happened, Lyra had been patient and cooperative, never showing anger or hostility toward her captors. "Good morning, Jennifer," Lyra replied carefully, her voice carrying a musical quality that made even simple human words sound beautiful. Over the weeks, Jennifer had learned that Lyra was incredibly intelligent. She picked up human language faster than any, Earth linguist could have learned an alien tongue. But more importantly, Jennifer was beginning to understand that something had gone terribly wrong during first contact. "Lyra, I need to ask you something important," Jennifer said, sitting down across from the containment field. "When you first met us on your planet, what were you trying to say to us?" Lyra's eyes brightened with hope. This was the question she had been waiting for someone to ask. We say welcome," Lyra began slowly, searching for the right human words. "We give you gift of peace. We show you our hearts open." Jennifer felt her stomach drop. "But our translator said you were demanding surrender." No. Lyra shook, her head sadly. "We ask for friendship. We want to know you, your people, our people, together." As the days went by, Jennifer spent more and more time with Lyra, slowly piecing together what had really happened. The translation device had completely misunderstood the Zephyrian greeting ceremony. What the humans had seen as threats were actually gestures of welcome and peace. But the real shock came when Jennifer learned about Earth's reaction to their mission. Captain Rodriguez called a meeting in the ship's conference room. The senior officers gathered around the table, all looking tired and stressed from the long journey home. "I've received new orders from Earth Command," David announced, his voice heavy with reluctance. "They want us to bring back proof that we've successfully dealt with the alien threat." "Threat?" Dr. Walsh stood up quickly. "Captain, I don't think they were ever a threat. I've been working with their leader, and I believe we made a terrible mistake." Lieutenant Thompson, still convinced that they had done the right thing, shook his head. "Doctor, you're getting too close to the prisoners. They could be manipulating you." "Jake, listen to me," Jennifer said urgently. "I've learned enough of their language to understand what really happened. They were trying to welcome us. The translation device got everything wrong." "That's impossible," Lieutenant Park interrupted. "Those devices were tested for years before we left Earth." "Tested with human languages and computer simulations," Jennifer replied. "Never with truly alien communication patterns. We assumed their language would work like ours, but it doesn't." Captain Rodriguez rubbed his forehead, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him. "Even if that's true, Earth sees what happened as a successful first contact. They think we showed strength by capturing potential enemies." "But they're not enemies," Jennifer insisted. "And if we return to Earth with prisoners, we'll be starting an interstellar war based on a misunderstanding." That evening, Jennifer made an unauthorized visit to the containment bay. She found Lyra sitting quietly, staring out through a small window at the stars. The alien woman seemed lost in thought, probably thinking about her home world growing, more distant with each passing hour. "Lyra, I need to understand something," Jennifer said gently. "Do you have a family back on your planet?" Lyra's eyes, filled with what Jennifer had learned, were Zephyrian tears. They sparkled like tiny crystals as they fell. "I have 2 small ones, children. They wait for me to come home." "Tell me about them," Jennifer encouraged. "My daughter, she is curious, always asking questions about stars, about other worlds. She wanted to meet your people." Lyra smiled sadly. "My son, he is gentle. He takes care of small animals, helps them when they are hurt." Jennifer felt her heart breaking. Here was a mother, separated from her children because of a translation error that nobody had caught in time. "Lyra, is there anything you can tell me that might help me convince my people that we made a mistake?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked directly at Jennifer with desperate hope in her eyes. "In my culture, when 2 peoples meet for first time, we make sacred promise. We say, if you accept us as friends, we will give you our most precious gift." "What kind of gift?" Jennifer asked. "The gift of new life, new hope for both our peoples." Lyra paused, struggling to find the right words in human language. We say, we will bear strong children together, not as your translation said, as equals, as family. Jennifer's eyes widened as she began to understand. You were offering an alliance, a joining of our peoples through cooperation and friendship? Yes, Lyra nodded eagerly. But your machine, it made our words sound like we surrender to you, like we become your servants. The next morning, Jennifer requested an emergency meeting with Captain Rodriguez. She brought all her research, all her recordings of conversations with Lyra, and a desperate plea for justice. "Captain, we have to turn this ship around," she said, spreading her notes across his desk. "We've kidnapped peaceful ambassadors and destroyed any chance of friendship with an entire civilization." David looked at the evidence Jennifer had gathered. The more he read, the more he realized the terrible magnitude of their mistake. "Earth Command won't understand," he said quietly. "They're expecting us to return as heroes who dealt with an alien threat." "Then we have to make them understand," Jennifer replied, "before it's too late." But even as she said the words, Jennifer could see the doubt in her captain's eyes. Earth was expecting a victory, not an apology. The question was, would anyone listen to the truth before fear and misunderstanding turned first contact into the first interstellar war? In her cell, Lyra continued to watch the stars, whispering prayers in her native language for her children she might never see again, and for the two species who had gotten off to such a tragically wrong start. Back on Kepler 442b, Cale Mortain stood at the highest tower of his city, watching the stars where his beloved Lyra had disappeared weeks ago. As Lyra's life partner and the father of their two children, he felt a pain deeper than any physical wound. But Cale was also a skilled navigator and strategist for his people, and he refused to give up hope. "Father, when is Mother coming home?" asked his 6-year-old daughter Zara, tugging at his flowing robes. Her innocent question cut through his heart like a blade. "Soon, little star," Cale replied, kneeling down to hold her close. "Your mother is very brave, and she's trying to help everyone understand each other better." His son, 10-year-old Dex, stood nearby with tears in his large eyes. "The other children say the Sky people took her away forever. Is that true?" Kyle looked at both his children, seeing so much of Lyra in their faces. "Your mother made me promise something long ago. She said if anything ever happened to her while she was helping our people, I should never stop fighting to bring her home. And that's exactly what I'm going to do." Meanwhile, aboard the human ship Explorer, Dr. Jennifer Walsh was fighting her own battle. She had spent every free moment learning more about Zephyrian culture from Lyra, and what she discovered amazed her. The Zephyrians were not just intelligent. They were far more advanced than humans in many ways, especially in understanding emotions and building peaceful societies. "Jennifer," Lyra said during one of their daily sessions, "I must tell you something important about my people." "What is it?" Jennifer asked, setting down her recording device. "We have, how do you say, ships that travel between stars. My mate, Cale, he is very skilled with these ships. He will not leave me here." Jennifer felt her blood run cold. "Are you saying your people might come looking for you?" "Not to fight," Lyra said quickly, seeing the fear in Jennifer's eyes. "Cale knows that fighting will only make things worse, but he will come. He promised me." At that exact moment, Lieutenant Jake Thompson was reviewing the ship's long-range sensors in the security office. What he saw on his screen made him call Captain Rodriguez immediately. "Sir, you need to see this," Jake said when David arrived. "We're detecting multiple ships approaching our position. The energy signatures match the technology we saw on the alien planet." Captain Rodriguez stared at the display showing 5 sleek vessels moving toward them at incredible speed. "How long until they reach us?" "At their current speed, maybe 6 hours," Jake replied. "Sir, they're not making any threatening moves, but they're definitely tracking us." David felt the weight of command pressing down on him again. He had hoped They could reach Earth before any complications arose, but now they were about to face the consequences of their actions in the middle of empty space. "Call an emergency meeting," he ordered. "All senior officers now." In the conference room, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Dr. Walsh sat across from Lieutenant Thompson, both of them knowing this moment would determine everything. "The alien ships will be here in less than 6 hours," David announced. "We need to decide how to handle this situation." "It's obvious," Jake said firmly. "They're coming to rescue their people. We should prepare for battle and contact Earth for backup." "No," Jennifer said, standing up quickly. "That's exactly the wrong approach. If we fight them, we'll prove that humans are the aggressive species they now think we are." "Doctor, they're pursuing us across space," Lieutenant Park pointed out. "That doesn't sound peaceful to me." Jennifer turned to Captain Rodriguez. "Sir, I request permission to bring Lyra to this meeting. She can help us understand what her people want." Jake slammed his hand on the table. "Absolutely not. We're not bringing a prisoner into a strategic planning session." "She's not our enemy," Jennifer shot back. "She's a mother who was separated from her children because of a translation error." "That's enough," David said, raising his hand for silence. "Jennifer, you really believe these aliens aren't coming to attack us?" "I'm certain of it," Jennifer replied. "Everything I've learned about their culture tells me they avoid violence whenever possible. They're probably just as scared and confused as we are." After a long pause, David made his decision. "Bring her here. But Lieutenant Thompson, I want security present." 15 minutes later, Lyra entered the conference room. She moved gracefully, despite the energy restraints around her wrists, and her presence seemed to fill the room with a strange sense of calm. "Lyra," Jennifer said gently, "ships from your world are coming toward us. Can you help us understand what they want?" Lyra's eyes brightened with hope for the first time in weeks. "Kyle," she whispered, "my mate comes for me." "Are they planning to attack our ship?" Jake asked directly. Lyra looked confused. "Attack? No, Kyle knows violence creates more violence. He comes to talk, to understand what happened." "But why so many ships?" Lieutenant Park asked. "Because," Lyra explained patiently, "when something important happens, we do not send one person alone. We send representatives from different parts of our society, healers, teachers, parents, leaders. Everyone must understand." Dr. Walsh felt a surge of excitement. "Captain, this could be our chance to fix everything. If we can establish proper communication with their delegation, we might be able to explain what really happened." But Jake wasn't convinced. "Or it could be a trap. How do we know they're telling us the truth?" "Because lying is not part of their culture," Jennifer replied. "I've spent weeks studying their language and customs. Deception is so rare among them that they don't even have words for many types of lies that humans consider normal." "Captain." Rodriguez looked at Lyra carefully. "If I allow you to communicate with your people when they arrive, will you help us explain the misunderstanding?" "Yes," Lyra said without hesitation. "I want peace between our peoples. That is why I was on your planet in the first place." As the hours passed, the two groups prepared for what might be the most important conversation in human history. Dr. Walsh worked frantically to improve the translation systems, using everything she had learned from Lyra. Lieutenant Thompson prepared security protocols that focused on protection rather than aggression, and Captain Rodriguez practiced the words he hoped would prevent a war. But the biggest challenge was still ahead. On one side, there was Earth Command, expecting their ship to return with proof of human superiority over alien life. On the other side, there was a grieving family and an entire civilization that had watched their peaceful ambassadors disappear into space with strangers who had responded to friendship with weapons. In the middle was Lyra, a mother who had become the bridge between two worlds that desperately needed to understand each other. As the alien ships grew larger on the view screen, she whispered a prayer in her native language. not for her own safety, but for the chance to turn a tragedy into hope. The next few hours would determine whether first contact between humans and Zephyrians would be remembered as the beginning of a beautiful friendship or the start of an interstellar conflict that neither species really wanted. The moment had finally arrived. On the main view screen of the Explorer, 5 beautiful Zephyrian ships hung motionless in space, their curved hulls gleaming like pearls against the darkness. They had been waiting there for 2 hours, making no aggressive moves, simply maintaining their position at a respectful distance. Captain David Rodriguez stood on the bridge, his palms sweating despite years of military training. Behind him, Dr. Jennifer Walsh worked frantically with the improved translation system, while Lieutenant Jake Thompson monitored weapon systems that he desperately hoped they wouldn't need to use. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim Park announced from her communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel." "Put it through," David ordered, then looked back at Lyra, who stood between 2 security guards near the back of the bridge. "Lyra, we're going to need your help." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the face of Cale Mortain. Even though he was an alien, the humans could see the worry and determination in his expressive features. Behind him, they could glimpse other Zephyrians, some wearing what looked like official robes, others in simpler clothing. Kyle spoke first in his native language, his voice carrying across space with surprising clarity. The translation system, now improved with Lyra's help, provided a much more accurate interpretation. "Greetings, travelers from the distant world. I am Cale Mortain, and I speak for our peaceful delegation. We come seeking understanding and the safe return of our people who were taken from us." Lyra stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Kyle," she whispered in Zephyrian, and even without translation, everyone on the bridge could hear the love and relief in her voice. "My beloved," Cale replied, his own voice breaking with emotion. "Are you well? Are the others safe?" "We are unharmed," Lyra answered carefully. "But Kyle, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. The visitors did not mean to cause harm. Their language machines failed them." Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat and stepped into view of the communication screen. "I am Captain David Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Explorer. I want to apologize for what happened on your world. We came in peace, but our technology failed us at the worst possible moment." One of the Zephyrians behind Kyle, an elderly female wearing ceremonial robes, moved forward. Through the translator, they heard her say, "I am Elder Nira, keeper of our cultural traditions. We must understand what went wrong during the greeting ceremony." Dr. Walsh joined the conversation, her voice shaking with nervous energy. "Elder Nira, our translation device completely misunderstood your peaceful greeting. When Lyra offered the traditional crystals of friendship, our machine told us she was demanding our surrender." The elder's large eyes widened in shock. "Surrender? But the crystal ceremony is our most sacred expression of peaceful intentions. How could your device interpret it as hostility?" "Our technology was designed based on human language patterns," Jennifer explained. "We never imagined that an alien language might work so differently from ours. The concepts your people were expressing don't exist in our culture in the same way." Kyle spoke up, his voice heavy with sadness. "When Lyra raised the peace crystal, she was saying, 'We offer our hearts and minds in friendship, and we hope to build a future where our children can know your children.' This is how we begin all important relationships." Lieutenant Thompson, who had been listening from his security station, suddenly felt sick to his stomach. He remembered that moment on the planet's surface, remembered seeing the alien woman raise those strange objects and thinking they looked like weapons. "Sir," Jake said quietly to Captain Rodriguez, "I think I need to explain something to these people." David nodded, and Jake stepped into view of the communication screen. "I am Lieutenant Jake Thompson, the officer who ordered your people to be Detained. I thought you were threatening us. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. The bridge fell silent as Jake continued. When I saw Lyra raise those crystals, and when our translator said she was demanding surrender, I believed we were under attack. I ordered the capture because I thought I was protecting my crew. Elder Nira studied Jake's face through the screen. Young warrior, I can see the truth in your eyes. You acted from fear, not hatred. This gives me hope that we can heal this wound between our peoples. But just as the conversation was beginning to bring understanding, an alarm sounded on the bridge. Lieutenant Park looked up from her station with panic in her eyes. Captain, I'm receiving a priority message from Earth Command. They're ordering us to prepare for immediate return and to maintain control of the alien prisoners at all costs. David felt his heart sink. Can we delay responding? No, sir. They're demanding immediate confirmation of orders received. On the communication screen, Kyle and the other Zephyrians could sense the sudden tension among the humans. What is wrong? Kyle asked. Dr. Walsh looked at Captain Rodriguez with desperation in her eyes. Sir, if we follow those orders, we'll destroy any chance of peace between our species. But before David could respond, Lieutenant Thompson made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He reached over to Lieutenant Park's communication panel and activated the ship's general broadcast system. Earth Command, this is Lieutenant Jake Thompson aboard the Explorer, he announced. I need to report that we have made contact with a peaceful alien civilization, and we are currently engaged in diplomatic negotiations to resolve a serious misunderstanding. Lieutenant, what are you doing? David demanded. The right thing, sir, Jake replied firmly. Earth Command needs to know the truth about what happened here. The voice of Admiral Patricia Chen crackled through the speakers from Earth Command. Lieutenant Thompson, Captain Rodriguez should be making this report. What is your status? Jake looked at his captain, then at Lyra, then at the faces of the Zephyrian delegation on the main screen. Admiral, we captured 5 innocent people because our translation equipment failed. These aliens came to us in peace, offering friendship, and we responded with weapons because we misunderstood their greeting ceremony. There was a long pause from Earth Command. Finally, Admiral Chen's voice came through again, colder than before. Lieutenant, are you saying that you failed to secure an alien threat? No, ma'am, Jake replied with growing confidence. I'm saying there never was a threat. We created a crisis through our own ignorance and fear. Dr. Walsh stepped forward and added her voice to the transmission. Admiral, this is Dr. Jennifer Walsh. I've spent weeks studying their culture. These people are more advanced than us in many ways, especially in building peaceful societies. They could teach us incredible things if we approach them with respect, instead of suspicion. On the main screen, Elder Nira spoke to her delegation in rapid Zephyrian. Through the improved translator, the humans heard her say, "The young ones speak with honor. Perhaps there is hope for both our species after all." But the conversation was far from over. Earth Command was expecting a report of successful domination over alien life, not an admission of diplomatic failure. The Zephyrian delegation was waiting for the safe return of their people and some guarantee that this misunderstanding wouldn't happen again. Captain. Rodriguez realized that the next few minutes would determine not just the fate of the prisoners and their rescuers, but the entire future relationship between humanity and the first alien civilization they had ever encountered. The truth was finally emerging, but the question remained. Would it be enough to overcome fear, pride, and the momentum of misunderstanding that had brought them all to this critical moment in space? The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines and the quiet breathing of people from 2 different worlds, all waiting to see if peace was still possible. 1 year later, Dr. Jennifer Walsh stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, the first joint human Zephyrian research facility orbiting Kepler 442b. Through the large windows, she could see both human and Zephyrian ships docked peacefully, side by side, their crews working together on projects that would have seemed impossible just months before. "Dr. Walsh, the ceremony is about to begin," announced Lieutenant Kim Park, who had been promoted to diplomatic liaison after the events of first contact. Kim smiled as she approached. "Lyra asked me to tell you that her family is very excited to finally meet you in person." Jennifer nodded, smoothing down her formal dress. Today marked the first anniversary of what both species now called the Great Understanding. The moment when truth had finally overcome fear and misunderstanding. In the station's main assembly hall, representatives from both worlds had gathered for a very special celebration. The room was decorated with both human flags and Zephyrian crystal arrangements, creating a beautiful blend of two very different cultures that had learned to appreciate each other's beauty. Captain David Rodriguez, now serving as the station's human commander, stepped up to the podium. He looked out at the mixed crowd of humans and Zephyrians, remembering how impossible this scene would have seemed during those dark days in space. "Friends from both Earth and Kepler 442b, David began, his voice carrying clearly through the universal translation system that Dr. Walsh had perfected. "We gather today not just to celebrate peace between our peoples, but to honor the courage of those who chose understanding over fear." In the front row sat Lyra Veltar, now wearing the ceremonial robes of Chief Cultural Ambassador. Beside her were her children, Zara and Dex, their eyes bright with curiosity as they watched the human ceremony. On Lyra's other side sat Kale, holding her hand and smiling with quiet pride. "A year ago," David continued, "we almost let a simple translation error destroy the greatest opportunity in human history. We almost let fear turn first contact into first conflict. But some people refused to give up on the possibility of peace." He gestured toward the audience. "Dr. Jennifer Walsh spent weeks learning to truly communicate with our new friends. Lieutenant Jake Thompson found the courage to admit his mistakes and tell the truth to Earth Command. And Lyra Veltar never stopped believing that two very different species could learn to understand each other." The crowd applauded as Jake Thompson stood up from his seat. He now served as head of station security, but his job was very different from what it had been a year ago. Instead of protecting humans from aliens, he protected the cooperation that both species had worked so hard to build. "I want to say something," Jake said, approaching the podium. "A year ago, I was the man who pointed weapons at peaceful visitors. I was the one who ordered the capture of innocent people because I was afraid of what I didn't understand." The room grew quiet as Jake continued. "But Lyra and her people taught me something important. They showed me that strength isn't about being ready to fight. Real strength is being brave enough to admit when you're wrong and work to make things right." Elder Nira, who had become a regular visitor to the station, stood up slowly. Her age was showing, but her voice was still strong. "Young Jake Thompson, your words honor both our peoples. You have shown that wisdom can grow from mistakes, and that courage comes in many forms." Then it was Lyra's turn to speak. She moved gracefully to the podium, her children watching proudly as their mother addressed the mixed audience. "1 year ago, I stood on my homeworld holding crystals of peace, trying to welcome visitors from the stars," Lyra began. "When I was taken from my family, I thought the universe was ending. I thought my children would grow up in a world where humans and Zephyrians would always be enemies." She paused, looking out at the faces before her, human and Zephyrian, all listening intently. "But I was wrong. Sometimes the most broken things can be mended into something even more beautiful than they were before. My people have an old saying, 'The strongest bonds are forged in the fire of shared struggle.'" Lyra gestured toward Dr. Walsh. "Jennifer taught me that humans value truth and fairness, even when it's difficult. She fought for understanding when others wanted to choose the easier path of fear." Then she looked at Jake Thompson. "And Jake showed me that humans can change and grow. He could have stayed afraid, but instead he chose to become a bridge between our worlds." Young Zara, Lyra's 6-year-old daughter, suddenly stood up in her seat. "Mama, can I say something too?" The crowd chuckled as Lyra nodded and helped her daughter up to the podium. Zara had to stand on a small box to reach the microphone, but her voice was clear and confident. "I want to thank the humans for bringing my mama home," Zara said in carefully practiced English. "And I want to tell all the human children that Zephyrian children like to play games and learn about stars just like you do. We're not scary. We just look different." The audience burst into applause, and several human parents in the crowd wiped tears from their eyes. This little girl, who had almost lost her mother to fear and misunderstanding, was now speaking about friendship between species as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Captain Rodriguez returned to the podium for the final part of the ceremony. Today, we officially launched the Harmony Project, our joint mission to explore the galaxy together as friends and partners. No more misunderstandings, no more fear of the unknown. From now on, when we meet new civilizations, we'll approach them with the wisdom we've gained from our own mistakes. Dr. Walsh stood up and activated a holographic display that showed both Earth and Kepler 442b. The first joint human-Zephyrian exploration ship launches next month. Its crew will include members from both our species, and its mission will be to find other intelligent life in the galaxy, not to conquer or control, but to learn and to share. Elder Nera raised her hand and spoke in her native language. The translator rendered her words. "May this ship carry the hopes of both our peoples to the stars, and may it return with new friends rather than new fears." As the ceremony concluded, people from both species mingled freely in the reception area. Human children played with Zephyrian youngsters, their laughter filling the station with joy. Scientists from both worlds compared notes on their latest discoveries. Military officers who had once prepared for war now planned joint training exercises focused on exploration and peaceful contact protocols. Lyra found Jennifer by the observation windows, both women watching the peaceful activity around them. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Jennifer asked. Lyra smiled. "Every day. But I also think about how perfect things are now. My children will grow up in a universe where meeting new people from other worlds is an adventure, not a threat." "Your original greeting," Jennifer said thoughtfully. "When you offered to bear strong children together, I finally understand what that really meant." "Yes," Lyra nodded. "Not the children of our bodies, but the children of our cooperation. Strong ideas, strong friendships, strong hopes for the future. The family we build together is stronger than the families we were born into." As the celebration continued around them, both women looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness, other species waited to be discovered. Thanks to the lessons learned from their own difficult beginning, future first contacts would be guided by wisdom rather than fear, by understanding rather than suspicion. The little girl who had once begged for mercy had become the mother of a new age of interstellar cooperation, and the humans who had once pointed weapons at peaceful visitors had learned that the greatest strength comes not from the ability to conquer, but from the courage to understand. In the end, the greatest victory was not military or technological, but something much more precious: the proof that different forms of life could not only coexist, but thrive together among the stars.